We are live. Hello, everybody. It's Jack Mac, Big Evan. We have a special guest here. Liam picks fights. But before we introduce him in a proper manner, we do have to tell you about our friends over at Blue Chew. Blue Chew has been with us for a minute on the Spinning Back Fist podcast. And get ready for an ad read, Liam. This one is the copywriter sent us an unbelievable ad read. But guys, enter the room. Dig first. Blue Chew isn't just a tablet; it's a cheat code for your crotch. Stronger, harder, longer lasting. Like someone gave your downstairs a pep talk and gym membership. Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. This ain't a supplement; it's an erection resurrection. And we have a special deal for our listeners. And as always, it's your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use code SPINNING. That's code SPINNING. And at checkout, pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head to bluechew.com for details and safety info. And big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. And welcome, Liam. This is one of our first guests in a while, which we love outside of fighters. We've interviewed a bunch of fighters, but Liam's a guy I've been watching on YouTube for a few years now. He has the background of a wrestler. He is a jiu-jitsu artist, and you're a wrestling coach too, right, Liam? And on top of it,
that's correct.
Every week he hosts a breakdown show, sometimes an early look at every UFC card. He also is doing Dana White Contender Series breakdowns right now. You can find all of his information in the description of this podcast, or if you're watching right now, Liam's the man. He's one of the most knowledgeable guys that I watch on YouTube each week, trying to get ready for the fights for the podcast. And when we had this kind of weird off week where we knew we had to have a show and MMA news doesn't stop, but what do we do instead of a card preview? Thought we'd bring on Liam, talk with him a little bit. So Liam, welcome to the show, and please add anything that I did miss in your intro.
No, I mean, I really appreciate it, man. At the end of the day, I'm a guy that really enjoys fights. That's the long and short of it, right? I've been watching the UFC pretty religiously, like weekend, every time, for the last 10 years, so the public facing part of my UFC fandom has been, more recent, right? Whereas beforehand, I was just watching on Saturdays, and I'm a guy that really gets invested in what I do. And I really enjoy it in terms of, my time investment, what I want to do in terms of, man, I'm watching it. I really want to understand it. So my, life when I was a young man was a lot of UFC free fight and then just watch it, right? Try and learn as much as I could. And my wrestling was like what my parents were cool with in terms of like, hey, go out there and, you're not getting punched in the face. You're not punching anybody in the face. They didn't want me doing that. But, wrestling was like the thing that is approved at school. And I was like, man, I see a lot of guys in the UFC. They come from a wrestling background. Let's get out there and do it. So for me, that was what wrestling was like my bridge into combat sports. And, wrestling at a competitive level, you learn like, man, there's levels to the game, right? I was a decent wrestler for where I lived, for my weight cut. Like you start breaking down the things, but there's really different levels. And I went to college. I learned a lot about that, right? And I think that in terms of my breaking down, wrestling, in terms of martial arts, my breaking down these fights as I watch them in terms of tape, a lot of it comes from the fact that I was a wrestler that started in 7th grade, and I'm trying to beat guys that have been wrestling their whole life. So I'd be watching my matches like, you're standing too tall, you're looking ugly here, your feet are crossed. And that's the kind of thing that, in order to get an edge on an MMA market that's getting more and more competitive, you have to have something, right? Whether it's, I'm looking at the lines early, whether it's, I have a background in this, whether it's, I just know a good line when I see one. There's many ways to make profit in doing this. But for me, that has been my kind of edge in the sport. It's like, I watch a lot of film. I'm a nerd for watching like different sequences, and there's patterns that you can't break when you're a combat athlete, things that are just your default settings. And a lot of times you see fighters get finished the same way over and over. You see fighters win by the same thing. It's because a lot of winning and losing in combat is pathological. I used to lose the same wrestling match every time. I'd be up 5-3, get reversed in the last few seconds. At a certain point, Chael Sonnen used to say, when I'm getting submitted in the second round of a fight I'm winning, at a certain point, that's not physical, right? That's mental, that's psychological. I'm losing up here. And, you know, I think that has been an edge for me, is like looking at these fights and trying to say, where are these patterns emerging? Are people getting hit with the same punch every time? Are they quitting in the same way when things go wrong for them every time? Those are the questions I'm starting to ask myself when I look at tape.
And Ev, is F frozen? He may be. Is that frozen?
I think so. I'm not here.
Okay, so sorry guys. For everybody in the chat, Liam does have a phenomenal track record. And the nice thing about the MMA betting community is you're kind of respected based upon if you track your record or not. And Liam tracks his record on Bet MMA tips. Obviously, people will talk about it in the community. Some people will go through it and try to game the system. But Liam's not one of those guys. And everything's there. You can audit it. He's through a 5-year sample size, an ROI of 7%. And also, I think the most interesting thing that I recognized about your betting history is looking at how your first year wasn't great. And it was, I think, minus 15 units. What do you think the biggest change? Obviously, 2020 was a weird year just in general. It was COVID, Fight Island. There was a lot of weird things. But what do you think is the biggest change you've made throughout your betting career that you've been like, oh man, this is really helped me the most?
Dude, that's such a good question. And I think that the number one thing is, first of all, you know, it's different to pick fights, to predict fights, than it is to bet on fights. And I think people should recognize that going in. You know, I was good at predicting fights before I ever started doing shows, before I ever started doing things like that. And in part, it was just because like I was watching everything, right? And a lot of people don't watch every card every week. I was like, I know this guy. You know, I was a nerd. I'd look up their YouTube videos, right? So I would make my own predictions, and I was going like 60%. I'm like, man, how could I lose if I bet? Like, I'm doing really good on these predictions, right? And so I started out just tracking, right? And I was like, man, how do I lose when I'm like doing well with the predictions? But you guys know as well as I do, it's about selecting the bets, right? Like if I bet on 3 fights on the card and I get those wrong, but I picked all the other fights right, it's like, well, those fights didn't make me $1, right? Like we have to just acknowledge going in, a lot of gambling is about selecting the right time to place a bet versus not place a bet. Understanding we're not just trying to decide who's going to win, right? That could be easy, right? Oh, I think he's going to win. Yeah, he's minus 500. Everybody thinks he's going to win. Are you sure? Is he going to win 90% of the time? Those are the questions that you have to ask yourself if you want to win long term. And other things I would say that were mistakes for me was laying big chalk was something I was very guilty of early in my betting, because I was like, how could they lose, right? You watch enough fights, you go, they could always lose. They could lose 10 different ways. They could roll their ankle on the way out there. I've had bets win that are laughable, right? Where I had Brian Ortega against Yair Rodriguez, and I wanted to puke in my hands. I got 3 units on it. The guy's jumping up and down and rolls his ankle before the fight even starts. I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, but he still wins the fight, right? So there's a lot of randomness in fighting. There's a lot of overthinking in fighting. I remember I was going to bet Bilal Muhammad against Gilbert Burns, and then I saw his ankle looked like a balloon, right? To quote Conor McGregor, it looked like a balloon the week of the fight. I was like, he's not going to win this fight. And he goes out there and absolutely schools him for 5 rounds. Gilbert hurts his shoulder midway through the first round, right? It's like, this is fighting. At the end of the day, you got to go with the guy you think's tougher, the guy you think's going to last longer, the guy you think wants it more for 5 rounds. If it's 5 rounds, the more for 3 rounds if it's 3, because that's what is going to win a lot of fights at this level, right? People get knocked out, people get submitted, but that's a big like calling card that I'm looking for, is who is going to fight hard for my dollar for the duration that they're out there. Because I've learned these lessons over time, right? The laying big chalk and going home crying because they're like, oh my God, like how could they lose in this meme-like fashion? It's for me a lot more justifiable if I myself and say, hey, if I lay the underdog here, if I take this underdog price and it doesn't come through, could I look at the pre-fight information again and make the same decision? Oftentimes the answer is yes. Sometimes you go, that one should have been on the cutting room floor. I made a mistake there. You want to learn from the bad bets that you place, but that was for me a big learning lesson. If you look at my average odds, it's like plus 200 something, right? And it's because I'm now willing to say, like, I'll look like a fool sometimes, but this is going to pay off long term if I take proven commodities at good numbers. That's the goal for me. So again, doesn't work every time. It's what I've learned to do as a person that's been on both sides of the coin, right? I've had winning years and losing years. Even when I felt like I was a sharp MMA bettor, last year was not a great year for me. But what I'm trying to do is establish, okay, what's a comfortable amount of risk? What's a smart risk? And then if I take that and only that, then at the end of the year, I'll let the results be what they be. All I can do is control, did I place a good bet with the pre-fight information? That's what I try and do.
I feel like we have you there.
No, I'm there. I'm there.
Okay, oh, my bad. No, so,
I'm good.
We are so Liam. We have a lot of fans that love to bet on fights, and obviously, a lot of fans are guys who are going in there and every fan thinks about who's going to win, who's not going to win. A lot of them are not casual MMA fans, but they may be casual bettors. For those types of people, what would you say the biggest advice you would be? A guy who's not going to sit down and watch the tape, and who's not going just because he's busy at work. She's busy at work. Obviously, they could tune into your show. But what's one tip that you could give to just a regular MMA fan that likes to tune in every Saturday, wants to put some dollars on the line responsibly, wants to win, but knows that it's a very hard market to beat? That being said, they want to get involved and make sure that they're putting their money in a decent spot, like you said.
I made a list before we got on the show of some recent winners. And the reason I did this is, like, these are winners from this year. And it's just because I want to show some commonalities, right? Cam Rouston was a guy who just fought on Contender Series.
Yeah.
One of the only official Contender Series bets I've placed so far this season. I've been very selective. New York, we don't get as many access to odds as some other jurisdictions, right? But Cam Rouston had the size, right? He's the bigger fighter coming in. He had the experience of being on Contender Series before. He trains with really high-level guys, and he had a better quality of competition. He's been fighting good guys since he was a young fighter. Meanwhile, this other guy's had 5 fights. 2 of them were against decent guys. He got rocked in both those fights. So, again, maybe you don't watch all those fights, but you say to yourself, wait, there's a guy with 5 fights, and he's now a favorite against the guy that we saw here last year against Torres Finney, a guy who won 3 fights on Contender and then won a fight in the UFC. You don't even have to watch the film to just go back and look and be like, these records don't seem like they add up. Like, unless this guy's the second coming, I'm not sure that this is going to make sense. And, I thought he was going to lose by sub or decision. He got knocked out in the first round. That's MMA for you. But it's like, just looking at the data, I was like, don't love that. Then I look at Paulo Costa, right? Experience. He's fighting championship level fighters. He's fighting world-class guys in the top 5. He's taking them to decision. Sean Strickland, split decision, right? It's like, I didn't agree with the split decision, but a licensed judge is saying, we like the work he's doing so much, he could have beat this guy who's a world champion. And now they're saying he should be a plus 200 underdog, a similar price as he was to Robert Whittaker, as he was against Roman Kopylov, a guy who hasn't beaten these guys. So these are the kind of things where you start to look at the themes. And again, there's other, fights in there. You look at it, you go, man, that one didn't, it didn't work out, right? Weston Wilson had 1 UFC win. Yiza has no UFC wins. Weston Wilson, a black belt under a good black belt. It's like, you start looking at it, you can convince yourself, man, he's got a chance. He didn't have a chance, right? He got smoked out in the first round. The odds makers were absolutely right there. But because he had a win in the UFC, because I thought he had a path to victory, he didn't shoot a takedown, right? That made me sad. But you look at it, that's how I justified the bet pre. I'm like, if he goes out there and wins 1 out of 10 times, I'm basically getting my money back here, right? And by the way, I had Weston Wilson as a massive dog against Jekka Seregi. So you just look back, it's like, this guy's already paid me off to go out there and try and do the job, right? Meanwhile, if you look at how most people bet the UFC, they look for guys that are super proven, that haven't flubbed yet, right? They're undefeated, but have they faced the adversity? Or have they faced a good fighter yet? Or have they been in deep waters? Everything's a knockout in the first round. These are the kind of things that I would say thematically, you want to look to know when to fade it, right? I could give another example of a fight where I didn't even have a bet on the fight, but I tried to steer people away from betting Duplessis, who I had been betting basically religiously at underdog prices. I was like, this guy as an underdog is going to fight hard for your dollar. He's got skills everywhere. He's physical. But then you look at the matchup each time. Khamzat Chimaev is basically a minus 500 against everybody he fights in the UFC. And he goes out there and clears that price and absolutely beats the tar out of him. And then we judge him critically and say like, oh, this guy sucks because he goes to, a competitive fight with Usman after hurting his wrist in the first round. And by the way, if you watch that back with no commentary, Chimaev wins 30-26. That's my God's honest truth opinion. So people judge you harshly if you're perceived highly, right? And then you go out there and don't dominate it as much as they expect. You can get a discount in the next fight. These are the kind of things where you look at thematically how you try and approach these fights. The odds makers are setting, Merab Dvalishvili, one of the most insane cardio freaks you've ever seen in your life, as a plus 290 underdog against any man, woman, or child. It's like you just take the plus 290 and hope for the best in that kind of case, right? That was my argument against Umar. I was like, yeah, Umar's a great fighter. I won't disagree with you. But it's plus 290 on a guy that can fight hard for 25 minutes against anybody and give himself an honest chance. When he's almost knocked out against somebody, he's going to get back up off the canvas and start swinging again. It's like those are the guys I'm looking for when I'm trying to place a bet. And if you go with that more often than not, I think you come out ahead. But you have to be disciplined and try and make the right decision each week. Does this person fit the category? And sometimes you will be wrong. And you have to accept going in like, if I'm going to bet on underdogs, if I'm going to bet on guys that people don't expect to win, sometimes they're going to be right. But if you're in good positions, if you're saying I'm taking good fighters at good prices, eventually I think you come out ahead. So that's my strategy.
You have anything ever?
No, I love it. I would say it's funny because I love to just fire. I'm not a good gambler, bad. But I know, Jack knows about, I know fights and I watch. I think my problem is I'm such a volume guy. I just fire. Dude, my two biggest problems, and I know they are, it's the volume and it's also my problem is the things I like the most and the things I just want to throw on. Sometimes I'll just throw the same on it just because I'm like, I just end up, honestly, part of it was a gambling show I do. We set this like standard of like 1 unit every play. And I think I've not that I like never differ at all in dollar amounts, but I'm the type where like, oh, like something I like love, I'll end up just being like, oh, like this that I'm also betting. But then if it hits and I lose and it wins, I'm gonna be pissed that I didn't bet like more on it. So those are my two biggest problems, 100%. But I will say I have done good at Contender Series this year. I have found, and last year I did pretty well on it too. I think there's real money to be made. Like I think there's so many squash spots that even you said, because I'll do the initial wiki cap, I'll do the typology cap, and then I'll do the film cap. And that's where you're like, oh my God, this guy's fought bums. For example, this is one like the Yakev he was minus $1 billion this week. He goes out and runs through him in 30 seconds. I looked up Lorenz. I'm looking at him like, wait, this guy got knocked out by Abby, who we saw got smoked in the first fight in 2 minutes or whatever it was. And also he's a guy where I watched his last fight, guy took him down with ease. He got up. He kind of like hurt. He like got hurt in the exchange, but nothing that Lorenz really did to hurt him. He like had almost an injury. I don't know what happened. And he kind of just like got up and then just fell on the ground. Like Lorenz didn't. I don't know if you watched it in your.
Thomas Powell, bro. He just decided he had enough. I tweeted that out. He was like, I'm done with this one.
Lorenz didn't even hurt him. Nothing happened. He like got up from the ground exchange and he kind of just never got up. And then Lorenz just like jumped on him and the fight was over. It's like, all right, this guy's got this win, but he didn't do anything. So I think there's a lot of that. I've done good at Contender Series. I've tried to be better this year, but I fire from the hip unapologetically, and it hurts me. But I need someone like this to talk me into like, you don't have to bet every fight. Because I'm a guy, I like to bet dogs too. And I feel like the last like couple months I've been going chalk and I've got absolutely clobbered. Besides like this last card.
Yeah, and it always depends, right? The market, I felt last year, and I think the data actually supported that the dogs were not as active last year, right? So it's like if you're betting a lot of dogs, I bet a lot of submission props as well. When you look at the trends and like they're down for the year, you got to account for that sometimes and maybe make a small pivot in your strategy. But like if you look at these Contender Series cards, you can look at a big favorite like that, right? And say to yourself, like, what is the win condition? What have they proven? That guy's proven he can go out there and finish somebody in the first round. We look at the loss, column for Lorenz, right? The only loss he has, he got cleaned up in the first round, right? The guy's a builder. He's a guy that if you try and take him down, it's what made the matchup interesting on paper, right? Is that if this guy goes and takes him down a bunch, maybe he starts to get tired. This guy works his way back up. That was the idea, right? And then the guy just smokes him instantly. So you learn nothing about it. But it's like, you look at what he offers on paper, he's been knocked out of the first round before. The Yakayev round 1 prop, -135, right? The money line, -1,000. So now it's like, you're talking about, all right, I got to parlay it, or I got to do, as opposed to, hey, I'll take one risk here, like you said, maybe for a standard 1 unit risk, and say at -135, I think he wins this fight. I think he's going to go out there and smoke him in the first round. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But it's a smaller risk profile, right? Whereas if you're like a 10 units to win one, and then something goes wrong, a banana peel, right? The guy slips, falls, he gets tired. Those are the kind of things where with the incentive structure on Contender Series, that's always what I advise people. I'm like, look for a way to play them down. For example, again, I think it was Manuel Souza, right? I thought he was the best prospect on the card, but he also had the toughest matchup, right? So I was like, look at the round 2, look at the round 3, maybe a decision. Like that's how I thought it was going to end up going down. He melted that guy so bad in round 3, but that guy just has an incredible pace to his game. You watch his fights in the PFL, he's making guys work extremely hard. And that's the kind of thing that, again, when I'm looking at who I think is like proven to win these fights, guys that can go out there and push a hard pace for the duration that I know they're going to be out there, that's what I want to see that, right? And knowing that going in is such a game changer for your confidence. If you've never done it, these guys are human, right? Like they're worried about it too. And the one thing you don't want to be in a cage fight is tired, right? Because then you're just a sitting duck. You can't really do anything good to defend yourself. Ask Adolfo Vieira, right? A black belt in jiu-jitsu rendered, just happened from a move that he would surely try and defend if he had even a little bit left to give. He had nothing. And so I think that, energy, cardio, one of the number one things you could try and cap as an advantage in this sport. ABC say always bet on cardio. I heard that from John Anik. I've taken it with me through life because I feel like it gives you a huge advantage.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Souza because watching before, obviously it just happened on Tuesday night. It was a quick Dana White's Contender Series to talk about what happened this past week. But also coming into it, you were I forget who you had on with you this week, but he was kind of giving the take on the other side. And the nice thing about you is I feel like what you will say is you'll give both sides in terms of why a bet could hit or the upside of this bet versus the downside. But you just pretty much said, you're like, I think Manuel Souza is the real deal, man. You were just like, with such confidence in. You don't do that a lot. Obviously, you give respect to all fighters. But when we're capping these bets, and I wanted to ask you, and you kind of went into it there a little bit, but what made you so confident in Souza? Was it one of those things where you've been doing this for so long and you've watched so many fights, so many fighters, and you just looked at him and you're like, this guy has the goods?
That's definitely part of it, right? Like when I look, I want to say, shout out to Gordo Gambos, by the way. He's the co-host for the last 4 years on Contender Series. Very sharp guy. And if you look, like as the fights played out, right, there was no underdog that performed better than the guy he was shouting out, right? Yep. I said after the fights, no doubt about it, that kid's coming back. Like you want to say Contender Series, short notice, pick a lane. He's coming back to the UFC. He's that good. Because I didn't expect him to have that success, right? You got to also give credit and be like, holy shit. Like, I was talking to Manuel Souza because I know for sure that guy's the real deal. One loss on his record to Archie Colgan. And Archie Colgan, I know he's the real deal, right? Comes from a very high-level wrestling background. Strong guy, physical guy. Bunch of guys from Wyoming making noise on a big scene. And I think that he's a really impressive guy physically. He had to earn it, bro. He had to work for it every round of that fight. Manuel Souza was trying to chase him down, getting taken down, working back up to his feet. And that's why when you look at a guy's losses, right, if he goes out there losing admirably, fighting hard the whole time, you're like, he lost to the better guy. It happens, right? Like it's a two-man sport. And again, styles make fights. So this guy who can really wrestle, hold top position, be disciplined. He's not giving up the subs easily. If you saw how Manuel Souza is approaching his subs, he loves those arm locks, man. The Americanas, the Kimuras, that's a lot of where he's getting his bread in terms of the submissions on the regional scene. That works against guys that you can out physical, against the better guys, against the tougher guys, against the guys who are a little bit more savvy. Not going to work as well, right? That's what was kind of a struggle for him in the early goings of that fight. But what you see is a guy like this who's been tested, who's had real fights against real guys, tough guys, been through the trenches. Those guys, taking big shots from Rufy, walking through them, coming forward, showing I'm not afraid to get hit. I'm not afraid to be in a tough fight. Those are guys that are rare. There's a lot of guys that can whoop somebody's ass. There are very few guys that can fight really well, right? And fighting is in part about being able to take it and keep going, take it and give it back, make sure that you get yours. And I feel like that's what Manuel Souza always does. He's taking a piece of you. He's making you earn every position, every exchange. He's going to make you earn it. And if you have 15 minutes to fight hard, if you have dangerous intentions in everything you do, in the striking, in the grappling, somebody's got to be perfect. They got to have a perfect fight. Archie Colgan had a perfect 15 minutes. He did exactly what he needed to do to win, to not get hurt, to not get clipped, to not get finished, not put himself in a bad spot. Fought a perfect fight. It's kind of what you need to do to beat him. The split decision on his record, guys. Again, this is why you watch the fights as opposed to just wiki capping. I wiki capped it. I was like, split decision against some dude. Like, I don't know about that. I watched the fight back. That was a 30-27 if I ever seen one, bro. He out-grappled him. Every position, every exchange, did whatever he needed to win that fight. And frankly, it was a minor miracle that guy didn't get submitted. So I think when you look at his body of work, that's what told me that he had it. If you got it on the striking, if you got it in the wrestling, the grappling, you kind of just have all the boxes checked, right? I felt his opponent had a lot of boxes. That's why he's going to be back in the UFC. But he just doesn't have them all. And he hasn't been tested as much, right? And when you fight easier guys, you look better. But then when it gets tested for real, shit can go sideways, all the way sideways. And I thought in karate combat, he was slowing down. I thought he was getting hurt to the body. And in that karate combat match, I just didn't think that guy could make him pay. Our guy made him pay, and that's why I felt like if you've got 15 minutes with a guy who's really going to make you pay if you fuck up, that's the wrong guy to fight.
Before we continue, I just wanted to shout out to DraftKings. Obviously, football is here. We know this. The rivalries, the marching bands, the upsets. Big Ev's Ohio State on Saturday is going up against Texas in a huge game. I watched a clip of him earlier talking about that game, fired me up. And if you want to get involved with MMA, PFL, UFC, Dana White's Contender Series, depending on what state you're in, you can do it on DraftKings, but also you can do it for college football. And college football is back. Think you know the game. Put your college football knowledge to the test with DraftKings Sportsbook and turn your picks into big payouts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BACKFIST. That's code BACKFIST for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. And I think the games are about to start kicking off. Thursday, college football is here. No UFC this weekend. So if you want to get involved on your Labor Day when you're just sitting on the couch a little bit, coming in from the beach, Saturday's loaded. Tomorrow night's loaded. Sunday to Monday. Football's back, and we're going to be enjoying it with DraftKings. All right. I was hoping to get Dana White's announcement before we went live, but he has not gone live. I think he's at the White House today. But we do have a huge fight coming up in October, which is a rematch. Pereira, Poton against Ankalaev. And I've heard you talk about this before, and I want to ask you about this fight, not stylistically, you can obviously talk about that, but also one thing that I've heard from you that really resonates with me is when a fight will fall through on the last day or due to a bad weight cut, injury, and you'll reference that you saw the market already kind of mature. And looking at the market as a whole and seeing where the odds move, and obviously there's debates over steam chasing and all of that, but how much respect do you give to the market? You bet props mainly, but also you bet straight. How will you look at it, assess it? Obviously, you can look at it from the point of view of, I think this percent chance is going to happen, and this is what it's lined at, and I think it's a little bit off. But more so, my question's about how will you look at a market for on the main lines, and then also for a fight that's rebooked. Last fight, I think, I forget where it closed, but Ankalaev's a much bigger favorite here after we saw 25 minutes of data of them fighting.
Man, fighting is very random in a sense, right? Because if you look back, I think there was more reason, or there was reason to suspect that, O'Malley could be competitive in a rematch with Merab, because you look at the scorecards from last time, you look at the strike count, you look at the 5th round, he hurts him, right? And then Merab absolutely washes him in the rematch. And I must admit, I bet Sean O'Malley, I think for the first time in that fight, right? And it was a small wager, but I was like, man, you got a guy who's a great fighter at a great price. I bet Merab for the same reason against Umar. But when you look back at it, it's like Merab at plus 290 had a lot more upside than a guy like O'Malley did, just based on what we saw. And when you saw the fight play out, you're like, man, Merab got better. That is definitely a part of the story there. When you look at, the fights where, this rematch in particular, I thought Ankalaev deserved to be the favorite last time, right? And I just looked at it and I was like, you look at a guy in Pereira, he's going to be a fan favorite. He's going to get money, right? Like, are we under the impression that like every Alex Pereira fan like gave up on the guy? Like, no, I think they're going to come back to the window. But I just think when you look at the fight, this fight didn't move as much as that fight, right? As the Merab and O'Malley fight, which was, I believe, like pick 'em price the first time they fought, then like minus 300, minus 350 Merab the next time. You look at this fight, it hasn't moved quite as much. But when I look at it, it's like you got Ankalaev, the younger guy. You got a guy who can go out there and wrestle you if he needs to, right? Like we've seen him wrestle when he wants to get guys to the ground. Obviously, we saw Pereira defend that in the fight, but it's like, how much did he commit to that? I felt like he was winning the fight on the feet, felt like he could keep it there. And you've got a Pereira that's only getting older, right? Like that's been in a lot of hard fights, a lot of hard wars, that's made a lot of money and has some other business interests and things going on outside the cage now. I just think Ankalaev's kind of about that life, right? So there's times when the train has kind of left the station. Maybe the value's gone, right? But you still think like the odds are accurate. I said when Strickland was fighting DDP the first time, I was like, click DDP at underdog odds. Like that doesn't make sense. Then the next time they fought, he was minus 200. And I was like, that seems fair to me. Like, that's kind of where I thought it was going to be last time. So that fight played out like minus 400 DDP. You never know exactly what you're going to get in a rematch, but the kind of conditions that I see leading up to this fight tell me like the UFC would love to have Pereira as a champion. He does the right things, shows up to work, ready to, do it against anybody. But he's also the kind of guy where, it's kind of a miracle that he won the belt and held it for a long time because of having some limitations to his game. And, you needed a light heavyweight division that John Jones isn't a part of anymore. And certain things had to go right. So I just feel like, Pereira certainly deserves a lot of respect. He could definitely go out there and win this fight via knockout. Dangerous guy. But I just feel when we look at his body of work at light heavyweight, you could definitely poke a hole in some of these fights and be like, oh, did he even beat Jan Blachowicz? Like, that was a really close one. Could have went the other way, right? And you kind of start looking at it and you're like, man, Ankalaev, he's a bad matchup for a lot of guys because he just wins fights, man. He can knock you out. He can take you to the ground. Not a submission guy, but he can hold you down if he needs to. And he can press you into the cage, make it ugly. Just beat you up with knees, short punches. Like, he doesn't need to make it pretty, man. He can just win for 25. So it seems like a tough matchup for Pereira.
1,000%. All right. When we are looking at fights, I guess the common bettor will look at parlays, right? Is that something that I can't remember the last time you put it in a parlay, at least on your Bet MMA. And sometimes
it's been a long time, brother.
It's been a long time. Is it something that you try to avoid? I know it's tough because we're talking to somebody like you take a lot of pride in your craft, which comes across in all of your content and your Patreon and all of that. But sometimes, we also, as I said earlier, we have a lot of fans that just like kind of like they bet the promos, they bet this, they bet that. But can you explain to our audience why you avoid parlay specifically?
Yeah, man. It's hard to bet one thing right, isn't it? Like I always just tell people like, especially when you look at my strategy, a lot of people are looking for who's the lock, who's the favorite that's like clearly going to win. And there's some value to that, right? I know guys that are profitable bettors that bet big favorites that they are very confident in and they're very selective about doing it. But it just requires, again, selectivity, right? Not everything goes in the parlay, or maybe it's two legs of really confident plays. But I've just seen a lot in this sport that makes me say, man, anything could go wrong on one play, right? Somebody gets hurt that you didn't know about coming in. Things like this where it could just happen, right? It's a combat sport. These guys, they don't get paid that much money on a guaranteed contract, right? These guys got to show up to work. Sometimes they don't feel well. Sometimes they'd rather not be there. Sometimes their lady just broke up with them. Whatever you want to say. Sometimes they don't want to be there, man. And like you could tell, man, that wasn't his best, right? But you bet on him anyway. And now if I lose that as a standalone, hey, I got an opportunity to get back elsewhere. But if my whole night was tied to this guy having a great night, and I don't know that shit's gone wrong for him at home, or he's got a busted knee, or even just like he's trained with this guy before, he thinks he's going to lose because he already got beat up by him once in the training room. It's like, you do not know the psychology of this fighter. So in each case, I try and go, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to find out. And sometimes it's not going to work out. But I'd rather just get my resolution, right? Let's get there. Let's find out if I won or not, and then be done with it. And then make other decisions, right? I sometimes will live bet a fight, right? Or I'll look for an opportunity. But that's, again, something where I want to do that in the context of, hey, I'm going to be reasonable with my risk. I'm not going to go out of pocket here. And I'm just going to think to myself, like, is this the kind of bet I would have placed pre-fight? You know, a lot of people are trying to get involved with, hey, the fight's swinging this way. If you didn't think about it pre-fight at all, if you didn't say, like, if this guy's down after one round, then you might be chasing the illusion of value, right? So I try and come up with a strategy for these fights before I go into them and have an idea, like, who do I think has a better cardiovascular base? Charles Johnson, I could give a recent example. I multiple times clicked the fight not to go the distance live in that fight. And I also bet Charles live at plus 650 about 20 seconds before he knocked that guy out. And it's because I'm watching the fight live. I thought that he had better cardio. I thought that he had turned it up earlier than I expected. I thought his opponent wrestled to a fault. And I told people before the fight, I was like, if he goes out there and he's shooting 5-6 takedowns, that works against these guys that you can hold down. You're not holding Charles down. He's getting back up to his feet. And in that case, I was like, Charles had a busted eye in the first round, right? If you're watching the fight live, you see Charles' eye get busted, and I'm like, okay, his eye is literally like to the point where a doctor could come in and like reasonably start to question intervening because he can't see and he's pawing at it multiple times. They could ask you, can you see? The fight's over. So I'm starting to click plus 200 on the fight not to go the distance. I just clicked it a few times. I was like, this really doesn't make sense to me. And add on to the fact that Charles is the one that ends up cashing it. It's just like, that's what MMA is, right? There's a lot of randomness, but you can see sometimes a pattern developing. I had thought pre-fight, instead of betting Loner Kavanaugh ITD, which limits you to one guy, one outcome, or one set of outcomes, right? Why not the fight not to go the distance, right? It's a similar price, very similar price, but a lot of people think the favorite inside the distance, right? I always look at similar markets that have a price that could be very similar, but could get you multiple win outcomes, right? How about the ends buy? Most of these sports books, DraftKings included, guys, offers ends buy as a market. Most people don't check it, right? They don't even look at it. They look at their guy. It might be, this guy wins by sub and he's the expected party, right? Like the guy with the jiu-jitsu black belt, he's plus 350. The ends buy is plus 330. Do you really want to find out? For 20 cents, you want to find out if you're a genius or just like maybe take the ends by and hope, right, that either one of these guys goes out there and does the job for you. Fine. No problem. Make me look like a genius. Make me look like a fool. Cash my bet. I don't care. That's the kind of thing that I look to do. A recent example, Walker and what's his name? Walker and
not in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, yes, and Kennedy and Zechku. That's the one. And when they fought, I had the ends by sub at plus 460. Right? A lot of the market had just one guy to win by sub at like plus 400. You look at that and you just say to yourself, like, how wrong could you be? Right? Like, how wrong could you be on both these guys? By the way, Kennedy has a sub in the UFC. Walter's got multiple subs in the UFC. That's a big price. The fight was heavily favored not to go the distance. It's like, let's find out.
and you bring up a great point about DraftKings. One of the things that they've been great about is they've continued to expand their markets for MMA, particularly the UFC. Now, there's some jurisdiction issues with like New York versus New Jersey, but if you're in a state like New Jersey, they have a lot of props that instead of just looking at the over-under in the straight or in the money line, which you can do, and that's what DraftKings makes it really easy. Click into the fight, and it'll show you everything. You can scroll through, maybe like, wait a second, like you just said, if I'm taking this guy by sub, but fight ends by sub is practically the same price, maybe I should consider that. And that's why we love DraftKings, because they give a lot of options to their bettors, including during the college football season. College football is back. NFL will be here next week. And everything's about to happen at once. Playoff baseball will be here before you know it. The NBA will be here before you know it. College basketball, everything. And we know that the UFC never stops to take a week off here and there. But when the UFC's on, when PFL is on, DraftKings is the place to be. And if you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code BACKFIST, that's code BACKFIST for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. That's just $5 in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Props. Where was there a specific change when, or actually, I wanted to ask about this. Have you seen the prop market become less attackable and more mature? I know that we've even noticed from ourselves, like the round 2, round 3 props have, they went from like 11-1 and 15-1, now down to like plus 450, plus 700. Have you seen, what's your biggest change you've noticed in the MMA market from 2020, 2021 to now, which, man, the sport's grown massively. A lot of people have complaints about the UFC, but there's without a doubt that the UFC is a much more popular sport now than it was. People are going to get mad that I call the UFC a sport. Much more popular organization than it was just in 2019.
Absolutely. I think part of it is, any market that gets more attention is going to be a little bit sharper, almost by definition, right? Like, especially if you believe in an efficient market theory. But I think where you can find an edge in terms of prop markets is, I mentioned, one example of like, hey, this, you got two guys that both have a proven method of victory. It's a huge price. That's one example. But you look at how you want to attack these props. Susurkayev comes into the UFC and he's heavily favored to win inside the distance, right? But basically nobody's given him a chance to win by sub. And that's because of his Tapology record, right? That's because you look at his opponent and, he's got a credible grappling background. But hey, if I hurt you with a punch, follow you to the ground, I might be able to submit you even if you're way better at jiu-jitsu, right? There's the old expression, right? You punch a black belt in the face one time, you turn him into a brown belt, right? Like you hit him enough times, like he doesn't really know jiu-jitsu anymore, right? He's just ready to go home. And I think that when you look at, how you kind of attack these props, sometimes you have to be contrarian. When they zig, you zag, right? And a lot of times, guys, you're going to lose these bets, right? They're plus 800, they're plus 900, they're plus 1,000, but they're the kind of bets that you don't have to be Nostradamus, get it right each and every time to be profitable in the long term by betting them. So I would say that one way to attack the market would be to try and look at like, what is everybody confident? Like this is the way, right? And then try and pivot off that, right? If that's a way that you could attack the market, I think that is like a smart way to do it. Susurkayev by sub in round 2 was like 35-1 or something like that. Right? These kind of numbers are huge. And will you ever see it again? Probably not. Right. So it's like, if you can find somebody early that you think, man, this guy's dangerous. I shouted him out, right? He was on Contender Series. I talked about, guys, this guy Susurkayev is going to submit somebody soon. Mark my words. And then, Saturday, he's got his first submission in the UFC, right? When I say it, it's because I watch the guy's film and I see he knows how to grapple. He's moving very well. He's attempting offense. Sometimes it takes you 2 or 3 fights of attempting submission offense to get it. UFC stats will tell you, man, this guy's been credited with X amount of submission attempts. You can use that data, leverage it against the sports books, right? They might look and say, hey, he's got no submissions on his record. This guy doesn't know it. Wrist lock from a wrist watch, right? And then you look and you say, no, I saw him take somebody's back. I saw that. So again, if you don't have the time to watch the tape, that's fine. There are a lot of good shows. I wouldn't say like watch my show. Like there's a lot of guys that put in time and effort watching tape. I'd say if you have a good ear for this stuff, if you've watched a handful of fights, you can tell when somebody's watched the tape versus when they haven't, right? I'll reference specific moments in tape against specific fighters. If I can't remember their name off the top of my head, I'll tell you it was, the guy who was 6-4. I watched it, right? And I'm trying to tell you what I saw. Will I be right every time? I won't. So I'll tell you that too, right? I'll just level with you off the top. But that for me is how I attack these markets and say, how am I going to find an edge? For me, the grappling has certainly been a bigger edge for me, but I also have made money betting women by KO because most people don't want to do it, right? It's like, if you look at, she's got a massive positional advantage in the grappling. She's going to be on top anytime she wants. I'll take the KO and find out. Like, I'll live with the result if she gets an arm triangle. Like, it happens, right? But then you see other times where Jillian Robertson postures up, throws the ground and pound, cashes me the ticket, right? And she's done it, I think, multiple times now in the UFC. So you look, when you're getting women to win the fight 12-1, I think Jacqueline Amarim against Conejo was 16-1 to win by knockout. It's just like, let's find out. Like, she's going to be on top every time she wants to in this fight. And Conejo doesn't quit with the first sign of adversity, right? So if you can look at the fight or the fighter, if you've watched them before, if you know something about them, like, hey, they're not just going to give up at the first sign of adversity. Maybe it'll be a TKO instead of a sub. Mark that down, right? If it's a mental note, you put it in your phone notes, whatever it is. And that's how you can get an advantage, right? It's just remembering things that people forget. You know, a lot of times you see Ian Gary's going to submit somebody in the UFC soon, just not like, mark my words, right? Because he almost submits somebody in every fight, right? And I said, this guy keeps making me sick with all these bets, but I'll be there when he cashes. Oh, I'll be there when he hits that submission. I'll have been there. So these are the kind of things where I look at, you know, do you have the skills? Am I seeing things that other people are missing in the market? That's how you attack the props. Because right now, I would say the common phenomena is that whatever's supposed to happen, the most likely thing is being steamed to all hell. So if you think like the most likely outcome is going to happen, maybe sit that fight out. Maybe look for a creative way to play an under, you know, something. But you don't have to have action on every fight. I would say the other thing is takedowns, right? That's a new market. Not everybody has it. So it's like, wow, I can look at this as a new exploitable opportunity. I know that significant strikes has been a big hit for people as well lately. So those are the kind of things I would recommend. Like, hey, if everybody offers this prop, but not everybody offers this prop, maybe this prop doesn't have the same level of maturity. I can look to this as an exploitable edge. I know my wrestling, right? If I think you got really good takedowns, I might bet you to get one. Eric Anders, I had said, hey, take Eric Anders to get one takedown instead of his money line. I was like, if he's not shooting takedowns, he's going to lose. I was like, but he's probably going to go shoot a takedown first thing in this fight. He shoots a takedown, gets the takedown, the guy stands up and kills him. Fine, cash the bet, be done with it, right? So those are the kind of things where you can look for value even on a fighter that's going to lose.
100%.
I love that Ian Gary call. You're so right. I mean,
dude, it's been brewing for so long. He's due. Absolutely due for the Irish.
He's going to get one. You're right. You're so right.
That
takes.
Looking back on it, the fact that Shavkat got out of that was, I mean, truly unbelievable, but showed how tough of a guy. Ian Gary's a guy that's really turned around his reputation within the MMA community throughout the past few years. Obviously, there's been some unfair criticism, but then, you know, outside the cage stuff does factor in. And I know
I hate to see an Irishman winning. You could say it. If you won't, I will. It's all right.
But we do have to get out of here, Liam. Thank you so much. This will be very valuable. I'm going to cut up some clips. You had some great, like the various moments throughout the show that will be very great for social. I can't wait to put it up and will be helpful for years to come for us and for our fans and people that are fans of the social media page. But thank you so much for spending 50 minutes with us while on vacation. And again, you can find everything of Liam in the description. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on YouTube. He has a Patreon. Subscribe there. Support the guy, and he will make sure that he gives you that value back. And as somebody said in the chat, Bird carries. Liam's passion for talking MMA is awesome, and it comes across every time you speak. And it's been awesome to watch you really flourish on YouTube, and you will continue to do that. And I can't wait to see it happen. Thank you, Liam. You have anything else before we go? Like, you want to plug anything? Go ahead.
No, man, I just want to say I always end off any kind of appearance or anything that I do with God bless, good luck, and enjoy the fights. That's all I believe in, man. Simple stuff. Try and keep it focused on combat sports only. So if you follow me on those platforms, that's all you're going to get from me. I try and keep it very laser focused on that. And I'm already looking ahead to Contender Series for next week because that's the next big UFC product on the horizon. But also been glancing ahead at some early lines for everything else. And Lord willing, we can find some good opportunities in the near future. So that's the plan for me. And I appreciate you fellas having me on.
Next week's going to be awesome, man.
We're coming. Really, really strong.
Paris is going to be sick. Dana White's Contender Series, from the guys that I've followed, it seems like there's a lot of hype in the prospect circles about this upcoming card. We'll be here. We'll be back next week to preview UFC Paris. Enjoy Labor Day weekend. Enjoy the college football. Hopefully your team wins, unless they're Texas, because Ev is an Ohio State fan. But
I'm with Ev, man. Go Bucks.
Go
Bucks.
And it's gonna be an awesome weekend. Make sure to get involved in DraftKings if you're interested. They're there. They're easy. Use the promo. Everything's in the bio or the description. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next week.